morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our second webinar for the month of October. October is a very important month because October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and this is the 75th year. It is also the 30th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act of 1990, which are two very important milestones for employment for people with disabilities. And in honor of this, we're hosting a series of webinars through this month. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you find this webinar helpful. And for today's topic, we're going to be talking about navigating challenging situations in the workplace. So we have three presenters from our service provider community that have a lot of experience with this and will be able to share this valuable information with us. Each presentation consists of about 20 minutes of content via PowerPoint, and there will be opportunities for questions towards the end of each presentation. And also, please join us for next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about virtual interview tips for success on October 21st. And on October 28th, we're going to talk about developing a one-page profile for your employment search. But for today's presentation, the topics will be email etiquette, which are going to be presented by Christian Alvarez from ECF, Exceptional Children's Foundation. We're also going to hear from Claire Gray, who's joining us from Peak Performance. She's going to be speaking about mask etiquette. And we're also going to hear from Janisha Miller from Creative Steps Aurelia Foundation. She's going to be speaking to us about conflict in the workplace. So we truly hope you enjoy these presentations. And at the end of each presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to go ahead and present the first presenter, which is Christian Alvarez from ECF.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Christian Alvarez, and I am a case manager with the Exceptional Children's Foundation. I am part of the in-class and career support services for CNC training, which includes soft skills training. So soft skills are non-technical skills that relate to how you work, a combination of communication skills, social skills, and career attributes. I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that anytime you do have a question or a comment, you can use the Q&A feature or click on the raise hand button on your screen, and I will answer all the questions at the end. So the way we communicate reflects on the type of person that you are, whether it be an employee, a student, or a friend. So in today's world, people are relying more and more on technology, and the way we communicate is constantly changing. In today's workshop, we will be discussing email etiquette. Having proper email etiquette will streamline communication and show that you are an employee with good work ethic, professionalism, and attention to detail. So it's important to create a professional and mutually respectful atmosphere in the workplace. So before we get into it, I kind of want to go over the elements of an email. I'm sure that most of us have sent an email before, so this might be just something like a little review. So the first part is the recipient. That's who you're emailing. In this case, I put down my email address. Let's say that you're requesting a copy of the presentation for you to download and review. So the next section is the CC, which stands for carbon copy. So in this case, I put down, for example, like a parent's email. The next section is BCC, which stands for blank carbon copy. This is also known as the sneak copy. So it's this is where you put the email for someone that you want to receive your original email, but you don't want the recipient to know that they're included. So this is kind of like a privacy measure. BCC should only be used when you are sending an email to a large group of people, and you want to keep those email addresses private. So meaning that the recipient or the person that you're originally emailing will not see who the email was sent to. So the next section is for the sender, and your computer will automatically enter your email address. So make sure you're logged in properly to your account, and as a reminder, not to share your passwords or account information with anyone. The next section is the subject line. So this is where you would be putting what your email is going to be about, and we'll go into a little bit more detail later on. It's just important to keep it concise and to the point. The next section is your greeting. So this is your opening. You can keep it like really short, like I did here. I just put, "Hi, Christian." We'll go into a few more examples, but this is just depending on the type of email and who you're emailing. The next section is the message. So this is where you put your request or whatever you're emailing. And lastly, we have the signature block. So this is your closing. And like your opening, it can vary depending on the person that you're emailing. So if you're emailing for work, any type of workplace situation, it's best to use your first and last name. So now that we understand the basic elements for emailing, so how do we practice email etiquette? Well, first of all, what is it? What does that even mean? So email etiquette is a general set of expectations regarding how people should communicate when sending electronic mail, which is what emailing is. So we should follow these general rules because it helps improve communication and create a mutually respectful relationship. Most people feel better about their jobs when they feel respected, and this translates into better customer relationships as well. So a little thing that I like to remind myself when sending an email is the perk. So what's the perk to email etiquette? P for perk stands for professionalism. So you want to come across as someone who knows what they're saying and what they're talking about. E for efficiency means that writing emails that are clear and eloquent and will increase effective communication. R for respect, meaning that you are writing an email and you're often making a request. So you do want your audience to respect you and your request. C for common sense, meaning just, having the basic humanity is like the basis for everything. And angry, hateful emails is just counterintuitive of that. So just having common sense and reminding yourself to be kind. So important thing to know is knowing your audience. So who are you sending your email to? Say that you're sending an email to a boss, you will not be sending the same type of message as if you were emailing a friend. So it's important to know who you're emailing and what type of email you're going to be sending. So be mindful of the language you use when emailing and know the difference between, a casual email or a professional email. So whether it be a boss, your parents, a coworker, a friend, if you can think of anyone else, maybe like your service coordinator or your case manager, anything like that. So would you be sending a formal email or a casual email? So I do have some tips and suggestions for you. Tip number 1 is to try to use a professional email address. So I did do a really funny email. So avoid using personal emails like sillycookieninja@ymail.com. So this one might be fun and, like something that reflects who you are, like your personality, and that's all fine for your personal email. But say that you're going to be emailing a prospective employer, you're going to email your resume. You wouldn't want to have that as your first impression. So if you don't already have a professional email, go ahead, that you should make a second one. It can be something simple, just make sure it includes your name in a way. I know it's very difficult to get one that's specifically your name, so it can be any variation of that. For this one here, I just put jsmith@ymail.com. Email tip number 2, use a professional font. So it should be clear print font and avoiding bright colors and highlighting behind the text because it's really difficult to read. You probably can't even see this one on the screen, the first part. It's way too light and it's hard to read. So no one's going to be able to read that very well. The second example here, I have a yellow highlighted background. It just hurts your eyes, and if it's an entire email like this, it's going to be really difficult to read and you might not even get a reply back. Email tip number 3, include a clear, direct subject line. So your subject line should be very clear, and for an example, it can include your name and the topic. So say that you are emailing your resume for an employer, the subject line can simply read resume and then your first and last name. So in this case, I put resume, Logan Maxwell. So just make sure that it is clear and it's just a really quick summary of what it is. You don't want it to be a full sentence long. Email tip number 4, begin with a professional salutation, which is, a greeting. So in the first example that I gave you guys, it was just a simple, hi, Christian. So if you're in first name basis with someone, then you can go ahead and use that. Say that you're emailing someone that has a title, whether it be, for example, Dear Mrs. Gonzalez, good morning, Dr. Coiney, hello, Mr. Spencer. So it's important to use the titles if they do have it. Maybe they even have, like Chef Gonzalez or Officer Coiney, Congressman Spencer. Just if they do have a title, they've earned that title, so you should use it in their emailing. Email tip number 5, proofread, proofread, proofread. I know I said it 3 times, but it's because it's that important. So make sure that you do spell check, use complete sentences and proper grammar. So if you type a quick email out, just read it quickly, make sure that It all makes sense. Maybe even read it out loud because it does help with catching grammar mistakes. It's also important to spell the recipient's name correctly, especially if you're asking for something from them. Make sure that you have their first and last name spelled out correctly. Just because it does look really unprofessional to email someone with a request, but not be thoughtful enough to take the time to double check their name, their spelling, or sorry, the spelling of their name. Email tip number 6, try to limit exclamation points or avoid altogether. Formal writing doesn't typically use exclamation points. It's because it is considered, like a little informal, but of course there are some exceptions. So you should only use them for its intended purposes, whether it be to show emotion, to emphasize something, or to express surprise or excitement for something. You can use them as much as you want in friendly communication or social media. That's up to you, your own preference. But when trying to email for for the workplace or for a job, let's try to limit or avoid altogether if possible. So email tip number 7 is to avoid using all caps, just because it can be seen as shouting at your audience. You can use all caps, say like if you're like a title or something, just to like distinguish the differences. But just because if you do your entire email in all caps, it just sounds like you're shouting. So for example, I put here, I don't understand. So if someone were to just read that right off the bat, they're gonna kind of say it louder in their head. So it can be seen as screaming. Number 8, avoid sarcasm, followed by winky faces or other emojis. For the sarcasm part, sarcasm means, like using irony and humor to say the opposite of what is true. And it's very difficult to decipher tone in an email because you're reading it, the recipient is reading it themselves. So they can read it as a different way than you originally intended it. And it can be construed as passive aggressive. Humor does not translate well through email, so it's best to just avoid it in the workplace, just be proper and professional there. For the emojis, as fun as they are, you should keep them in the casual communication or even just social media, as that's where they would originally belong. Okay. All right. I just want to quickly remind anyone, if you have any questions, to use the Q&A. I just want to check in with Megan and Rhiannon if there are any questions in the Q&A box.
So we don't have any questions yet, but if folks are listening to the presentation, we encourage you to go ahead and submit some questions to us so that we can have Christian answer your questions.
Thank you. So again, use the Q&A feature or the raising your hand feature for any questions. Thank you. Okay, so emailing tip number 9. It's best not to email when upset. If the subject of the email is sensitive, it is best to discuss it in person or for today's world, maybe even by phone. Just because, again, words are read differently than they're heard. So just a reminder that tone is difficult to decipher through text. So if it is a sensitive subject, just pick up the phone or, schedule a call through email so that you guys can be on the same page and be available to discuss what needs to be discussed. Email tip number 10, don't assume the recipient knows what you're talking about. So if it has been a while in between emails, just give a quick refresher, like include the subject or any references to the previous emails or conversation just to bring everyone up to speed. Just because it can be a little time consuming or frustrating to look through past emails, try to search for it and try to figure out what exactly it is that you were first talking about. Email tip number 11. Be clear and mention specific details. This just kind of goes into if you're making like a general question. For this example, I put, last week during Zoom, you mentioned, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, well, which session? Everyone is meeting through Zoom nowadays. So which one are you specifically talking about? Which day? So if you do have details, then just include them in the email to make it a little easier for everyone. Email tip number 12. Be concise. So say what you need to say in a few sentences or less. This mostly goes for like making a request. Just get out with your question and try to condense it so that it's not a very lengthy email. Email tip number 13, keep private information and material confidential. So it's very easy to share emails, even if it's, by mistake or inadvertently. It's important to be mindful when forwarding information with a long email chain, because if you do forward an email chain, they're going to get every response that you guys have talked about. So if you are forwarding something, just make sure that you do have consent or permission before sharing personal information or confidential information. Email tip number 14, include a compliment and or a note of thankfulness. So compliments and gratitude make your audience more receptive to your request, and it helps you to come across as a kind person. So this kind of goes back to the original slide that I showed you with the perk. Kind of like the common sense stuff. Just be kind and thank someone. So whether it be, thank you for getting back to me, or I appreciate your help, I appreciate you reaching out to me, anything like that, just, thank them for their time. Email tip number 15, include both your first and last name in the signature block. Again, the signature block is the very last part of your email. You can keep it simple with this thank you. Sincerely is a little bit more formal. And if you kind of want to go between, I like to use kindly sometimes when I'm emailing colleagues, because it kind of already includes like, that little note of thankfulness. So for this example, kindly, Christian Alvarez. Email tip number 16, allow time for a response. So usually it's about 24 to 48 hours or 2 business days, so Monday through Friday. Weekends generally don't count, for a reply to your email, and that also goes for phone calls. So if you leave someone a voicemail, just give it at least 2 to 3 days. If you don't hear anything back and it's an urgent matter, it's okay to follow up with an email. Just give them a quick, hey, hello. I emailed you a few days ago, and I just wanted to remind you that, this is due so-and-so day. So that is okay to follow up with them, but do allow some time in between to get back to you. If possible, try not to ask for something, as soon as possible. It's important to plan ahead. Of course, there are, sometimes that you get a deadline. So if it is an urgent matter, you can express that in your email or phone call. Email tip number 17, if you have no choice but to write a lengthier email, use bullet points when possible. Just because bulleted questions or statements are easier to read, organize mentally, and to remember. So if you have a lot of questions and you put them into paragraph form, 1 or 2 might not get answered because they're going to get kind of lost in there. So if you were to number them or put them in bullet points, you can refer back to it easily, and the person who is answering your questions can kind of keep track in that way. So just a reminder, what's the perk to email etiquette? You come across as professional, efficient, respectful, and show that you have common sense. So the way you email someone reflects on who you are as a person, and the way you carry yourself reflects your professionalism. And if it's the first time emailing someone, it could be a deciding factor when searching for employment. Like I mentioned in, I believe, the subject email one, if you're emailing your resume, it's the first time that they have heard your name, heard what you do. So it is important to be professional, especially when you're looking for a job. So it does take some practice and to keep your emails professional and to the point. The more you practice, the more polished and organized you look in the long run. I'm still practicing myself. It's not a perfect science. Just trust yourself and just make sure you reread it and decide if it's professional or not. So that's it for my presentation, guys. Thank you very much for listening. If you guys have any questions, I will check the Q&A box, or you can use the raising your hand feature to ask any questions.
Thanks so much, Christian. That was a really great presentation. So we definitely want to give folks an opportunity to ask Christian questions about email etiquette. We have a little bit of time, so feel free to use the Q&A box if you have a question, or raise your hand. We don't have any questions yet. So maybe I'll turn it over to Liddy, because she might have a few questions as the moderator of our event that we could start with. And then as the audience comes in, we'll make sure you know that there are questions waiting.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Christian, for the great presentation. We have a question. If sometimes when you're writing an email, it's hard to, as you mentioned, it's hard to see the tone of somebody's intent, right, when they're writing it. If I were to receive an email that makes me not feel so good, maybe I feel a little bit upset from the response that I received, before responding to the email, what would you recommend, from your experience, what would you recommend as the best approach to take in this case?
Well, thank you, Liddy. In that situation, you can just be very direct and ask the person who sent you that email, what do you, just for some clarification, so what do you mean by, like the statement that they said? If you don't feel comfortable with the direct approach, you can always give that person a call. Like I mentioned, if it is a sensitive issue or a difficult subject, then it's best to do it over the phone and get all the details worked out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
No questions from the audience yet.
Okay, well, thank you guys very much for listening. And Liddy, if you want to present the next presenter.
Yes, thank you, Christian. Thank you so much for that great presentation. So if there are no questions, we're going to go ahead and move on to our second presenter, which is Claire Gray from Peak Performance. And she's going to be talking to us about mask etiquette. As currently during the COVID-19 pandemic, this is a new challenge that we have seen in the workplace. So we hope that you find this information helpful. And with that said, take it away, Claire.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being with you all today for this webinar. As Liddy mentioned, I'm going to be talking about mask etiquette and some considerations to help keep you safe and in compliance while wearing a mask in the workplace or while job searching. Why we wear a mask? Well, we know that wearing a mask, in addition to frequent hand washing and social distancing, is important in protecting ourselves and others in case either person has COVID-19 symptoms and they're not showing them. Properly wearing a mask will prevent saliva droplets from spraying others when you talk, laugh, sing, or cough. You should always wear your mask covering your nose and mouth and below your chin. Change your mask frequently to ensure you're not exposing others to contamination. As you see here on the chart, why we wear a mask, the highest form and the highest chance of transmission would be if neither person is wearing a mask and one person could be having COVID-19 and not showing any symptoms. One of the safest ways would be to stay home where there's practically no chance of transmission. Masking 101. It's important to find the right mask for you. There are many choices and styles, materials, colors, and patterns, but make sure whichever mask you choose is comfortable enough to wear for a period of time. So when choosing a mask, ask yourself these questions. Does it fit above your nose? Does it fit below your chin? Can you breathe comfortably? And are the ear straps comfortable? And if not, maybe you can add some padding to help. Also, there are 3 major things that are important to wearing a mask. First, always wash or sanitize your hands before putting your mask on. And whenever possible, wash or wipe your face too. Secondly, avoid touching your face and mask while you're wearing it. And lastly, always wash your hands before you remove your mask. At this point in the pandemic, we've all become pretty used to wearing our masks, and sometimes we might forget that people can't read our body language. So remember to wave or nod at others as you greet them, because even if they can't see the smile, it is polite to convey genuine warmth and kindness when greeting others. Proper wear and care. Taking care of your mask is very important. Always remove your mask when you're eating and drinking. Don't put it under your chin or hang it from your ear in between uses, and be mindful where you put it. Always place your mask in a clean, dry place to avoid it getting contaminated. I'd recommend a plastic bag or something simple. Proper caring for your mask, you should wash it every day. You can see here some basic instructions. If you're not familiar with using a machine or ironing, maybe you can ask for help, or just simply hand wash your mask. Always throw out a disposable mask after about a day of use. I recommend keeping a couple of masks on hand always so that you know you have a clean one available. Let's talk exemptions. Who is exempt from wearing a mask? Well, some individuals may be qualified for a mask exemption. And what that means is some people have medical reasons that make it difficult for them to wear a mask. Some of the reasons that an exemption is allowed could be if a mask will obstruct your breathing, possibly if a person has a mental health condition such as anxiety, or maybe other medical conditions or disabilities such as hearing loss, where the ability to read lips might be impacted by wearing a mask. You can always talk to your healthcare provider if you're uncertain if you will qualify for such an exemption, and I'll talk a little more about exemptions and employers later. While you search. So when conducting a job search, you should consider some of the following factors. You should consider your ability to wear a mask for an extended period of time and question if you are comfortable doing that. You should always think about the job setting and requirements prior to applying, and do some research to help you understand these things prior to applying for a position to ensure your success. If you're still unsure of something, you can reach out to the Human Resources Department for further answers. And remember, never feel scared to ask someone for clarification. It's better to ask and know than to go into a situation ill-prepared. Here's some popular jobs that require a mask and don't require a mask. So you can see in the mask category, retail workers, sales representatives, sales associates, customer service, office assistant, receptionist, waiter, waitress, fast food workers, baristas, the list goes on. No mask, you could possibly be a telemarketer, a telephone operator, call center worker, or work from home on other projects such as assembling things. When interviewing, a few helpful hints. So when interviewing for a job or working from home, or working for a job where you will be required to wear a mask, it is best to just keep it simple. Dark neutral colors or plain disposable masks are good examples. Avoid wearing masks that makes personal or political statements when you can, or your sporting team, or any other distracting pattern. It's a good idea to check with your employer to know what their requirements are. And in addition, you may request a virtual or telephone interview if you're more comfortable. But if you choose to be in person, just remember, avoid handshakes, maintain a 6-foot distance, and keep a smile on your face, because even if they can't see your mouth, they can tell that you're smiling in your eyes. So in summary, stay professional, avoid masks with sports teams or anything that could be viewed as casual. Always keep a clean mask, never wear a mask that appears dirty or unhygienic. Never use a bandana in place of a mask. It's not proven how effective these bandanas are, and it could be conceived as careless by a prospective employer. Always use your manners. If you cough or sneeze, cover your face, excuse yourself, and wash your hands afterwards. Employer accommodations. If you are currently employed, you will most likely be required to wear a mask. In some cases, you may have contact with customers. And if you're unable to wear a mask due to a medical reason, you can request your employer to provide a reasonable accommodation if possible. Some examples of reasonable accommodations in the workplace would be increased social distancing or a separate workplace space, and schedule changes, or requesting a leave of absence, or possibly requesting to work from home when this is possible. Here are some of your work options. You have remote, where you are working at home away from your job site. You see here a Zoom screen with many co-workers, probably having a virtual meeting. You can be in person, but with safety precautions such as wearing a mask, social distancing, and of course, frequent hand washing. And then in the last scenario, you are working in the office, but you have increased social distance, such as you're working in a separate room or cubicle. Know your rights. Remember that during the pandemic, you're still able to look for work and continue working. There will be a lot of changes to experience while doing this. And just know you have rights. So you have the right to refuse to wear a mask, but remember, an employer can also say no to authorizing you to work. So you have a right to work, you have a right to seek employment, you can say no to wearing a mask, you can request accommodations. If you need more information about your rights, contact your local office of client rights and advocacy. So in closing, I will leave you with a few do's and don'ts to help you safely job search. So do's, please make sure the mask fits correctly. Keep a 6 feet distance from others. Wash your mask often. Store your mask in a clean, safe place when not in use. Wash your hands frequently for at least 20 seconds. Don'ts. Please don't touch your face. Don't shake hands with others. Don't share your face mask. And don't socialize in large gatherings. In closing, I just want to wish you all the very best of luck in your job search. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Claire.
You're welcome.
Want to remind everyone, if you want to ask a question, you can enter it in the Q&A box. I thought of a question maybe that we could ask to start, just giving the opportunity. I know that there are ways that you can make your own masks.
Yes.
Where can people find the information about how you can make your own mask, or where maybe people might look to purchase their own masks?
Some of the most simple websites that I've seen are on YouTube, and you just simply program in how to make your own mask. I've seen people make them out of the t-shirts to make them very unique, and you just put some loops over, and as long as it's covering everywhere properly, that's one of the simplest forms of making your own mask, and even with just rubber bands on the ends of a t-shirt. And there's quite a few tutorials online, and I just, what? Pinterest. I'm Pinterest.
Awesome. Liddy, did you have any questions you also wanted to contribute? We don't have any in the Q&A box yet, but we can also check in at the end of the last presentation as well.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to tell Claire, thank you for giving us, providing us with this valuable information. During the current pandemic, this is a new challenge that has emerged in the workplace for a lot of people. Thank you for giving us with this presentation. I just wanted to kind of speak to the part that employment is still an option, so there's still jobs available. So you have a right to work. If you choose to work during the pandemic, just do know that it's going to look a little bit different. And if you might be required to wear a mask at work, but like Claire said, there's options. So if it's challenging or you have questions, your employer would be able to help you navigate the situation. And usually if you are employed and you are receiving services from one of our service providers, they would be able to help guide you as well with how to navigate this new emerging situation in the workplace. So thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Liddy.
Are there any questions from the audience at this point in regards to this topic?
So far, we don't have anyone raising their hand or asking a question, so we can check in again at the end as well.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. So we're going to move on to our next presenter, which is Janisha Miller from Creative Steps. Janisha is going to be talking to us about conflict in the workplace. So thank you, Janisha.
Thank you, Liddy. So let me share my screen, and I hope that's shared properly. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. And I know that we've had like 2 awesome presentations already, so maybe you want to do a little 7th inning stretch and refocus, because we're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to start talking about conflict in the workplace and how to resolve conflict in the workplace. All right. So that's our topic. So disagreements, which cause conflict, are a normal part of life, right? We have disagreements within our family. We might have disagreements with our brother or sister, our parents, or our worker, or many different people. So conflict occurs in all areas of life, and it also occurs in the workplace. So it's really normal to disagree with people. You're going to have different ideas and opinions, but it's how you deal with this kind of conflict and disagreements that's really, really important. So it can either really hurt you in your workplace or in your career, but it could also really, really help you, and a lot of good things could actually come out of it. So dealing with conflict in the workplace, it can actually, if you deal with it well, you can end up having better communication and listening skills by going through it. You can have increased self-confidence. You can increase your patience, and you can end up with stronger relationships with your coworkers and more understanding, and you can actually end up happier and more productive after conflict has been worked through well than maybe before it happened. So it's actually an opportunity. So you can look at it as an opportunity rather than something that's like bad. Okay, so what are some different examples of conflict in the workplace? So you can have conflict between coworkers. So that can arise when you have different work styles. Maybe you're used to doing something a certain way and somebody comes along and they do something different, a different way, and that can cause some conflict, right? You can have different personal habits. It can also arise when there's different, like cultural differences or differences in opinion. So I have a funny story about cultural differences. My mom and dad, when they were dating like 50 years ago, when my mom went over to my dad's house for the first time, his family's house, they were having some discussion about politics, and they were yelling at each other in each other's faces, and she was just like, whoa, you know. And then when they were leaving, they were like hugging each other and kissing each other, and she was just blown away because in her family, they didn't do either one of those things. And the culture of her family was very reserved. They didn't yell at each other and get in each other's faces, and they also didn't hug and kiss each other and stuff like that. It was just a very different culture, the two families. So they had to learn each other's different ways of being and different personalities and stuff like that. So it's normal. It's not necessarily, she thought that they were mad at each other, but they weren't actually mad. They were just getting passionate about what they believed. So that can happen. It can happen when people come across a certain way because you're not used to it, but it's actually not a bad thing. So a lot of times it's just misunderstandings. So that's one thing. Conflicts can also happen with a supervisor. So there's always going to be someone in charge, and someone being in charge can sometimes lead to some conflict, especially if you disagree with them. So the important thing though is to remain patient and have understanding, because if you have patience and understanding and you're going to listen to each other, then the supervisor and the employee can come out with more understanding at the end, and the conflict can be resolved, right? There can also be conflicts with customers. So if you work at a place where there's customers coming in, you might have someone come in and there's unclear communication, so there's misunderstandings there, or maybe someone's having a bad day, so they come off a certain way. So that can happen a lot in customer service, and you don't want to have somebody else's bad day make it so that you have a bad day. You can just kind of respond kindly, and then maybe you'll help turn their day around, right? So it can happen in all different areas. And then why do conflicts happen? So there could be a lot of these we talked about, misunderstandings and miscommunication. We talked about that. Differences in work style. If you're used to doing something a certain way and someone tries to change it without you knowing why, and all, you know, that can happen. Differences in management styles. You might want someone who gives you every single step, or you don't want someone who gives you every single step. So there can be differences on what you prefer when it comes to how to be managed. So that can cause some conflict. Differences in opinion, differences in personality. So we talked about a lot of these things already. All of these things happen, but none of them mean that we can't get along with the person well, right? We can work well with them even if we have these things happen. We just have to come out of it with a better understanding and communicate and give people the benefit of the doubt and learn from the experience, okay? You might end up learning something from their different work style, and they might end up learning something from your different work style. So we're gonna move on to some specific examples, and we're gonna have a little participation. So get ready, because there's gonna be some polls. All right. Example number 1, a conflict between coworkers, okay? The office refrigerator. Sarah regularly cleans out the shared refrigerator in the break room. One day, she unknowingly throws out Martin's leftovers. The next day, Martin discovers his food is missing and yells at Sarah. She responds by saying he should have clearly marked his food, and they both leave the exchange feeling angry. Sarah feels underappreciated for the work she does to clean the office, and Martin feels like no one respects his personal belongings. Okay, so we're going to take a poll, and we're going to try to figure out, where did this conflict come from? Why is there conflict in this situation? I think there will be a poll coming up. Okay, so did the conflict occur because Sarah wanted to eat Martin's lunch? Did it occur because she made an honest mistake and Martin got upset? Or last, did it occur because Sarah wanted to make him mad? She wanted to make Martin mad. So why did this conflict happen? Get some answers in. I'll give you guys a little time to vote and take the poll. All right. Oh my goodness, awesome. So we have 100% so far giving the 100% proper answer, right? So basically, good job. Miscommunication. It was an honest mistake. She didn't realize, right? So it was an honest mistake, and it was the second option. And there was another thing that was going on, is that oh, I think I stopped sharing results. Sorry. I don't know if you guys can see the results, but
they're shared right now. Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Sarah made an honest mistake and Martin got upset. So that is what caused the conflict. So something else that went on was that no one was willing to apologize. So that also happened here. And sometimes when we have conflict and there's a mistake that's made, whether or not it's on purpose, the best way to move on and resolve the conflict is just to apologize. So understanding that mistakes happen and trying to kindly communicate a possible solution for the next time so that it doesn't happen again is a good way to respond to conflict. So if you guys have the thing in your screen still, just click the upper right-hand corner and you can X out of that. And then we're gonna move on to the second example. Okay, example number 2, we have conflict with a supervisor. Okay, this is the second scenario. Josh works at a grocery store and is very committed to make sure that all of his responsibilities are taken care of. Josh likes to start out his shift by speaking to the manager to find out if there are any new tasks that need to be completed by that day. Josh's manager, Emily, tells Josh in a slightly loud tone to come back later. Josh feels like his efforts to be organized are going unnoticed and his feelings are hurt by the way that Emily spoke to him. Josh thinks that he might need to go to HR and ask to be transferred to another store because his manager is mean to him. All right, so we're gonna do another poll and try to figure out, where did this conflict come from? Okay, was it because Emily was not aware that her tone hurt Josh's feelings? That would be the first one. Was it that Josh doesn't like working at the store? That would be the second one. And then the final possibility is that Emily doesn't like working with Josh. What do we think? Why is this conflict here? All right, we have about a quarter of you voted. Get your votes in. Okay, so it looks like all of you guys are, oh, we have one person who put something different, which is, that's fun. That makes it funner. So most people, I'll give a full minute, which is about 5 more seconds. So yeah, most people put that Emily wasn't aware that her tone hurt Josh's feelings. So I would say that that sounds like the most likely reason. However, one person put that Emily doesn't like working with Josh. That actually, we don't know. That's a possibility, but how the story is said, is told, that's not necessarily, we can't really deduce that. So that would be if we came to that conclusion, there's a slight possibility that that's true, but we have no reason to believe that that's true. So if we jump to that, we might end up having a perception that's not going to help us resolve the conflict because we're assuming something about Emily that we don't know that that's true. So it's better to just assume that things are an honest mistake and that she doesn't realize that her tone is different. So it's the tone of voice and differing work styles. So Josh might need to be better supported from his supervisor, but a good way to do this when she is busy is to ask her when they would be able to meet. Emily's tone of voice hurt Josh's feelings. So communication from Josh about how this made him feel might be helpful to Emily so that she will know. She might not even be aware that her tone is coming across that way, and it would probably be good for her to know how some people are interpreting her tone also. So it's all about communication. All right, so we're going to go to the last example, which is conflict with a customer. Okay, Joan works in a clothing store and the holidays are approaching. A customer comes up to Joan and asks her if she knows where the women's department has a specific dress in stock that she saw on the website. Joan says, unfortunately, I don't know because I work only in the shoe department. The customer says, what are you, stupid? Can't you look it up on the computer? Yikes. The customer begins yelling about how terrible the customer service is and asks to speak to Joan's manager. Okay, so what caused the conflict? Is it that it was Joan's first day of work? She didn't know because it was her first day. Was it that the customer is at the wrong store? Or lastly, is it because the customer is having a bad day and is in a cranky mood? What do we think? Okay, we have a couple people voted. Okay. Okay, we have those different results, which makes it a little more exciting. I'm gonna give about 10 more seconds. So we'll have 50 seconds total. And then we can discuss the results. Okay, so we have 22% of you guys said that it was Joan's first day of work. It could be, but it didn't say that in the store. So in the story, sorry. So we're not really sure if that's the case. It did say that she didn't know because she normally works in the shoe department. So it's probably more likely that she might have been there for a little while. I might have tricked you when I said something after that one that might have made it seem like that was the answer. But so the actual answer, according to how the story is written, is that it's that the customer is just having a bad day and is in a cranky mood. So that happens, unfortunately. But we all have bad days. So yeah, but sometimes when you work in customer service, people can have a really bad attitude or they can just simply be having a bad day. So no one should ever be bullied by a customer, even if like the customer is always right. You can always talk to your supervisor about how to respond when a customer gets upset, okay? But one way to prevent this is that if you don't have the information that somebody is asking for, just to find somebody that does. So you just point them in the direction of where they can go to get the answer that they're looking for. So that's a good way to do that. So these are different, we covered some different strategies so far already, right? But say you've tried all this, say you've given them the benefit of the doubt and you've tried everything that you know how to do to resolve the conflict. What do you do now? I feel like I've tried everything and the conflict is still happening. Okay, so we're gonna give some tips that could help. So we'll go through these pretty quickly, but these are 10 tips on things to try if the conflict is still there. All right, so first, check in with support staff and meet with your circle of support. So if you're having a problem with a coworker or a supervisor or a customer, you can always ask for help from the support staff. Sometimes in the moment, this can be really helpful if you're working with a support of a job coach. After work, you can also ask other members of your circle of support for advice about what happened. So you can just get input from different people and input from your job coach, especially in that moment. The second one, stay calm with casual body language. Pay attention to this one because this one's really, really important. And it can make all the difference in the world. So before approaching a conflict resolution, it can be helpful to take several deep breaths and just like calm down. Sitting rather than standing can come across like in a more, you know, allow good things to come out of it position. Putting your shoulders back, just things that you do to calm you and relax you. You don't want to have your arms crossed when you're going in because it might come across that you're upset or defensive, and you want to have like open arms to your side and in a position to like resolve the conflict, right? You never want to be yelling or raising your voice or cursing or name calling, none of that. That's really, really never appropriate in a workplace and really anywhere. And you just want to we want to remain calm and professional so that when we're doing the conflict resolution, something good can come out of it. So if we're going into it with a certain energy, nothing good's going to come out of it. So we want to go in with an attitude that helps promote resolution, like a good resolution. Okay, so that's a really important one. The third one there says to find a private place to discuss the conflict. So conflict and conflict resolution can be really distracting. It can be distracting to people that are listening, can hear it. So you want to find a place that is private so you can work on the problem in private. And if that's not possible in that moment, you can just schedule another time that maybe you can have a place to work on it in private and maybe people can cool down by that time too. So it could be good for a couple different reasons, okay? Next, we have know the company policy. So find out if your workplace has policies or procedures for how to deal with conflict in the workplace or for having meetings to resolve conflict. You may want to check with your manager or supervisor for advice on how to proceed. If you need help learning about company policy, you can always ask for help from your support staff, your job coach, or whoever you have helping you. Your workplace may even have resources to help you address conflict effectively if you need it. Okay, so know your company policy. And then secondly, here it says set rules for the conversation. So you might want to set rules that include things like being respectful, taking turns when you're talking, not talking over people, maybe having a time for a break if it's needed. So just different things that from the get-go, people kind of know what's to be expected and how you're gonna go about this. Okay, identify your goals and triggers. Okay, so goals, what do you want to get out of the conversation? So you want to write down what you think might help fix the problem. So writing down things is really helpful a lot of times, and you could have your support staff help you with that also. And then triggers, also being aware of your triggers and think about the things that have made you upset about the conflict. You can write them down so that you can tell the other person about them without getting more upset. So again, when you write things down, it kind of removes you from being emotional and trying to explain it in that moment. It's kind of contained in this paper rather. Okay, so that's a really good tool that's really helpful. And it helps you express yourself better because you have something to fall back on, because sometimes when we're emotional, we can't articulate how we really feel in a productive way. Okay, so, and then let's see. Yeah, just think about things that you can do to calm down before the conversation so that the conversation can go well. And then finally here it says identify opportunities for compromise. So most conflicts end up with each person having to at least make some compromise, right? And maybe a lot of compromise, and that's okay. So you want to think about what you can do differently, not just what the other person can do differently in order to help fix the situation. All right, so next we have 3 more little tools. This one is agree for a plan for resolution. So come up with a plan that everybody will follow through with to make sure that the conflict doesn't come back again after the meeting. So this plan might include really specific changes like working different shifts or changing some of your tasks or taking additional training that will help address the problem that you're having. So there's a lot of different possibilities for solutions that that could be part of the plan for resolution, right? And then you can also seek for help from from the managers or owner or HR department. So if you and your circle of support have tried everything you can to resolve the conflict and the problem keeps happening, you may need to involve higher level leadership. Okay, so many companies have a human resources department that can hear your complaint and helpfully help you to solve the problem. If the company you work for does not have an HR department, human resources department, you could also just talk to whoever is in charge, the business owner or the executive director or the general manager. So just whoever, just go to the person who's in charge where you're working and seek for help from them. And then, which is similar to the last one, always ask for help when needed. So know that if you have a job coach or other support staff, you can always ask for help and try to resolve a workplace problem. Let your support staff know that you need help so they can help you figure out a solution to the problem. So we need to ask for help when we need it. People don't always know that we need help unless we ask. So ask. Also, so there's a little tip at the bottom of the screen. If you attend the workshop that's during week 4 of this series, you can learn about one-page profiles, which can help to explain to your coworkers and supervisor what you need to be successful in the workplace. So this can be helpful to reduce some of the conflicts that potentially may arise, and it can help you start the work relationship with a better understanding from the very start, because people already have an expectation of what you might need and in order to be successful in the workplace. So those are the tips, and we're going to end on a quote. Okay, so this quote says, "The quality of our lives depends not on whether or not we have conflicts, but on how we respond to them." So conflicts are a normal part of life, but it's how we respond and deal with them that's going to make all the difference. So hopefully with these skills, you can feel more comfortable and prepared to approach conflicts and manage them well while you're at work, and even when you're not in work. So, because they're just a part of everyday life. So that's all we have. Maybe there's some questions, I'm not sure.
Thanks so much, Janisha. That was great. We don't have any questions right now in the Q&A box yet, okay. But I would invite anyone who's listening to go ahead and enter your question in the Q&A box, or feel free to use the raise hand feature and we can allow you to talk. Liddy, do you want to kind of take it away for a few minutes while we see if there are any questions that come in?
Hey, yes, thank you, Janisha. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for providing us with those very useful tips. As you mentioned, conflict is part of the workplace. It's part of people. So thank you for giving us that presentation. I like that you mentioned that it depends on how we react to a situation. So if conflict does happen, depending on how we react could help us further our career in our workplace, or it can also hinder us too. So it's really important to take that into consideration, that there will be conflict, and it's good to have a plan for it as well, to know, I like that you mentioned, know to identify your triggers, know what makes you mad, what makes you upset, because it's okay to be upset. It's part of, life, but it really depends on how we react to it. That can really help us at work. So thank you for that wonderful presentation. Are there any questions from the audience in regards to this topic?
We have a question actually for Christian, I believe, because it's regarding the email presentation. So we have a question from Thomas, who is asking, regarding email, how do you handle reply all?
So thank you, Thomas. Regarding the reply all feature, if it's in an email that has multiple recipients in that, if you click reply all, it's going to send an email out to everyone that's in that group. So if you want to reply to just one single person, then you would just have to put reply, and you just make sure that it's the proper recipient. Or if you do want to reply to everyone that's in the email chat, then you can put reply all. I hope that kind of answers the question. Or if that kind of explains what reply all means.
Could you also maybe explain in what contexts people might use reply all? What would be the reason why someone would choose reply all as the option?
Yes, so reply all, so say that you're working in a team. So it can be, for school, for work, or anything like that, and everyone is discussing the project that you're working on. That would be a situation where you can put reply all. That way everyone can get the same update and everyone can be aware of the most recent change that's going on. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't see any right now. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to raise their hand? You can use the raise hand feature. We don't have any questions in the Q&A. We did have a comment from Samson saying that he didn't have a question, but that the presentations were enlightening and informative, and all the presenters presented in an exemplary fashion. And he said, congratulations. So just wanted to share that with all of you.
Thank
Yes,
you, Samson.
I agree with Samson. Thank you to all the presenters. You were all very amazing and wonderful, and I'm sure you provided such great information that I'm sure people will find helpful as they are either working or as they start their employment search. Are good things to think about. So we really appreciate your time and all your efforts. And thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much for the audience. We hope that you found this presentations helpful. The presentations will be recorded, or are being recorded, so they will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel. So you can always rewatch them if you feel that you would want to learn a little bit more, or maybe there were things you didn't capture. You can always take a look at them again.
And then Liddy, did if anyone comes up with a question afterwards, if they think about what they learned in the presentation, how could they get that information after the presentation?
Yes, so you could email me. How do we do this? Do I put my email on the chat?
I'll add it to the chat, Liddy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rhiannon. So you could, there were questions that you came up maybe after you thought about it a little bit more, you can always email me and I'm happy to help connect you with the appropriate answer. And please, next week, we're going to have another presentation on Wednesday, which will be on virtual tips. So during the age of, I keep calling it the age, but during the pandemic, things have changed significantly for employment. But overall, we want you to know that employment options are still available. There's still jobs out there. They might just look a little bit different during the current times. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit about virtual presentations, like virtual interviews, virtual tips for most job interviews right now are being conducted remotely. So we're going to speak on that to give you tips on how to prepare for these new types of interviews that we foresee is going to be most likely the future for employment for the time being. After that week, we're going to speak about one-page profiles and how to use them during the job search. As Janisa mentioned earlier during her presentation, it would be good to join that webinar because you will learn about yourself. You learn how to be able to identify what works best for you. So that way you can relay that information to your employer. Once you obtain a job, it's good to know what works best for you. And that way it could help avoid conflicts in the workplace. It could help create a better atmosphere for yourself and for your employer as well. So please join us for the next events that are going to be taking place. Okay, so if there are no more further questions, then this will be the end of our presentation for today. Thank you again to everybody that joined us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.